Okay, this video is for objective FP6. I will be able to solve equations by factoring through the use of in-class notes and activities. Okay, so we're going to be solving quadratic equations, and remember that a quadratic equation is in the form a squared, I'm sorry, I already messed it up. Try that again. Ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are numbers. Okay, so what is the zero product property? Well, all that's saying is that if you have two numbers, a times b, and they equal 0, then a or b has to be 0. So if I take 0 and multiply it by anything, it's going to give me 0. Or if the b is 0, it doesn't matter what a is, but it's going to give me 0. So another example, if x minus 8 times x minus 10 equals 0, then x minus 8 has to equal 0, or x minus 10 has to equal 0. At least one, if not both of them. Okay, so we're going to solve these equations here using the zero product property. So this is this example right here. So what we're going to do is set up each of these to equal 0 and see what x would have to be so that this part equals 0, and what x would have to be so that this part equals 0. So I'm going to move the negative 8 to the other side. It's going to make it a positive 8, so x equals 8. Move the 10 to the other side. X equals 10. So our answers here, we have two of them, would be x equals 8 or x equals 10. So let's try this again. I just break this apart into the two factors and set the two factors to 0. And then I'm going to solve them. So I subtract by 5, subtract 5, and I get x equals negative 5. And over here I'm going to subtract 7, so x equals negative 7. Okay, so when we first started looking at quadratics, we did talk about how to solve something like this. So if we tried to move the 77 to the other side, it would cancel out here, and then we'd have x squared minus 4x equals 77, and then we got stuck. We didn't know how to solve it past this. So the zero product property rule is going to allow us to solve past this point. So this is not how you solve this. So you can either X this out or erase it, but we're going to solve this in a different way because this way does not work for us. So if we took just this part on the left, we could factor it into x minus 11 and x plus 7. Okay, and we've been working on how to factor. So hopefully you know how to factor this into this. Once you have that, you can equal it to 0, and now you can solve this, because now you can go x minus 11 equals 0, and x plus 7 equals 0. Move that negative 11 to their side, and we get x equals 11, and x equals negative 7. There we go. Those are our answers. So what are the steps here to solving a quadratic? Well, first you have to factor. And then you have to set each factor equal to 0. Okay, so let's try a couple of these. So I'm not going to go over how to factor here. You can look at one of the last videos that I made to find out how to factor. But if we factor this, we are going to end up with x plus 7 and x plus 8. Okay, so my first step was to factor. My next step is to set both of these equal to 0. To find out what x would have to be so that this whole factor would equal 0. So the x would have to be either negative 7 to make this whole equation equal to 0, or negative 8. So you're always going to get 2 answers out of these problems. Okay, here's another one. We'll factor this, and we get x minus 2 times x minus 5 equals 0. And now I'm just going to set each part equal to 0 and solve. So my 2 answers here are x equals 2 and x equals 5. All right, I've left one for you to try. So give that a try. And then when you're ready, rejoin me. We'll check it in class, but rejoin me for the back of these notes. Okay, so here we have a new problem. Can we solve the following equation the same way that we've been doing? Well, no, we can't. Not right away anyway. Why not? Because it doesn't equal 0. However, we can do some manipulation of the equation so that it does equal 0. All we really need to do is get this 6 over to that side. So I'm going to subtract by 6, and I get x squared minus 10x plus 9. Okay, so our first step here, if not equal to 0, get all numbers to one side. So we went ahead and did that. Now on the right side here, 6 minus 6 is 0. Okay, next step, we're now back to where we were in the front. All we need to do is factor. So let's go ahead and do that. When I factor this, I get x minus 1 and x minus 9. And then my last step here then would be set the factors to 0 and solve. So x minus 1 equals 0 and x minus 9 equals 0. And after you've done this a few times, you'll probably be able to do this part in your head, at least when it's just simple factors like this. But my x is going to equal 1 or 9. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple and then I'm going to leave one for you to try. Okay, so first thing I need to do here is get everything to one side. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. And now I have 3x squared plus 7x minus 20 equals 0. Okay, and then I would have to factor this, and you would use the I-bar method, and then because the first term is greater than 1, you would then want to either use the box method or split the middle term, or really a combination of both. But again, look back at an older video to see how to factor this. But once it's factored, you get 3x minus 5 and x plus 4 equals 0. And let's just double check that. 3x times x is 3x squared. Negative 5x plus 12 would give us a positive 7x, and then negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Okay, so now I just need to set both of these to 0. This one's a little bit trickier because it's not just x and a number. We're multiplying by a number here too. And x plus 4. But we still solve the same way. I'm going to get this to the other side by adding 5, and now I have 3x equals 5, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I have x equals 5 over 3. Here, I just need to get this to the other side, so I have x equals negative 4. So my two answers here are 5/3 and negative 4. Okay, so this one looks tricky, but we're just going to follow those same steps and get everything to one side. So I'm going to take all of these terms and combine them with terms over here. I just have to make sure that when I move across the equal sign, I use the opposite sign. So 4a squared means I'm going to subtract 4a squared from both sides. And then I'll subtract negative 12a. And then lastly, I'm going to subtract 9. So on the right here, all of these are going to cancel out, which will leave me with 0. And on the left, when I combine these, 5a squared minus 4a will just be a squared. Then I have here negative 4a And then my last one here, 12 minus 9, is a positive 3. Next, I just need a factor. And this factors into a minus 3 and a minus 1. And I set each of these to 0. But if I set them to 0, I'm just going to do this in my head. What number could I put in here so that this would become 0? Well, a positive 3. If I put a positive 3 in and subtract 3, that's going to be 0. If I put a positive 1 in here and subtract 1, that's going to be 1. So my answers for that big equation there are 3 and 1. All right, one more I'm leaving for you to do. Thanks for watching.